friends, I hope that you had an exceptional day yesterday, and I hope that you've had a wonderful morning this morning so far. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about double-digit multiplication. Hopefully you completed this assignment this morning for your morning work, where you were able to make some observation about Andrew's work and also make some observations about Benjamin's work, just to see what was similar about the way that they broke these things down, and then also what was different. Make sure that you take a minute and discuss with your neighbor some of the things that you noticed on these two guys in their work that they did. So please take a minute and discuss the work that they did. Okay, so just like we've talked about before, everybody doesn't think the same way. Kamar thinks differently than Miles, and Miles thinks differently than JT, and JT thinks differently than Nadia. Nadia thinks differently than Beth. Beth thinks differently than Aubrey. It's just a lot of different ways of thinking. And so just as there are a lot of different ways of thinking, there are a lot of different ways to do multiplication. So first what we're going to do today is we're going to look, like I said, at this particular way of multiplication. It's called the FOIL method, and we're going to learn what the word FOIL means. But first we have to learn a few other things too. So let's start by reading our I can statement together. Read it together out loud. Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. I can multiply two two-digit numbers using the distributive property. Well, we've talked about what the distributive property is a little bit. And if you remember, it means where you're breaking apart or where you're sharing some of the numbers in the problem. So we're going to talk about the word decompose. Decompose. Man, I think I've heard that word decompose in the environment somewhere. Try to tell your neighbor a time that you've heard the word decompose before. Classity class. Hopefully you told your neighbor a time when you'd heard the word decompose. It makes me think of old food. So when your bananas start to go bad, they start turning brown. And so technically the food is starting to decompose. When your bread goes bad, it starts to grow mold on it, and the mold decomposes the bread. So decompose, in math though, it means to break apart. And I want you to go ahead and write down to break apart as your definition on this page. Okay, so now that you have that written down, we're going to look at this picture here. Okay, I'm going to zoom out a little bit so hopefully you can see the whole picture that I have. So in this picture, we have a number of rows and a number of columns. What I'd like for you to do is to take a minute. I'm going to ask you that you pause the video in just a minute and write down how many rows there are, how many squares are there in each row. And then if we wrote an equation to represent this picture, what would that equation be? So go ahead and take a minute and do that now. Okay, excellent. So hopefully you found that there were 29 rows, and that's in this direction. So I'm going to write the number 29 over here to the side, and that there were approximately 18 squares in each row. Hopefully it's not approximately. Hopefully it's exactly 18 squares in each row. Okay, and for your equation, in order to write it correctly, we would say I have blank rows of blank. So here I have 29 rows of 18. And that equals, I'm just going to say S for squares, because that's the total number of squares we have. If you remember, this number is that letter is our variable. Okay, so here's our question that we're going to think about for a few minutes. How can we decompose the picture? Okay, I want you to think about only the picture right now. How can we decompose the picture to make it easier to count? Is there a way that we could solve it by breaking it down in a different way? Okay, so I'm going to use a fork here. Okay, it's a fork. I'm going to use this fork, and I'm going to decide how I can cut this picture up. Okay, what I'd like for you to do, hopefully there are popsicle sticks to where you can go through and you can do this too. So in just a minute, I'll ask that your substitute pass those out. For right now, I want you to look at what I've got. If I was going to break this apart, I'm just going to put this down on the page somewhere. Okay, so I'll put it right down on a line, and there are a certain number on this side. I still have 29 rows, but my columns are split up a little bit more. And they're split up a little bit over here. So I've got two different sections. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down what I have. So first I have, let's say, 29 rows of, so I'm going to put X there, 29 rows of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 29 rows of 12. That's one way that I can break it down. And then I would have to add to that, let's see, 29 rows of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Still got 29 rows. I don't think that was 5. I think it was 6. I think I miscounted and moved my stick a little bit. 29 rows of 6. Okay? And I wrote it like this because I would probably have to multiply these two things together. And then I'd multiply these two things together. And then in order to figure out how much it was all together, I'd have to add. So that's why I wrote it down like that. What I want you to do, though, is I want you to take a minute and write down as many different ways as you can using your stick here to break it up. Please don't feel limited to do it only this way. You can also turn it and change it and write down some equations like this. Okay? Write down all of the equations that you come up with down in this section. Okay? Be sure to leave a little bit of room for us to write down things together. So this will be your side. This will be our side. Okay? Take a few minutes to use your popsicle stick to chop it up now. Okay, so hopefully you came up with a lot of different ways to represent the picture. You could have done 29 times 5 plus 29 times 13. You could have broken up 29 and it could have been 10 times 18 plus 19 times 18, right? Because I would still have the same number of columns and a different number of rows. Okay, so now what I want us to think about is, would any of these problems be easy to solve? Okay, 29 times 5, not the easiest to do in my head. 29 times 13, nope. 10 times 18, hey, I could figure that one out pretty easily, but I have no earthly idea what 19 times 18 is. That's not going to make it easy to solve at all. Okay, so we've got to think about another way to make it even easier to solve. Now, if you remember yesterday, when we were working on our double-digit multiplication, okay, we broke up the picture not one time, but 2 times. Okay, so what I want you to think about, well, goodness, first of all, what would be the easiest way to break up 29? The easiest way to break up 29? Well, hopefully you think the easiest way to break up 29, just like we did yesterday, would be to say I've got 20 and I've got 9. Okay, so I'm going to use my fork to separate that so I can see what it looks like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, take a minute to represent this on your paper too. Okay, so I have 20 rows here. I have 9 rows here. I still got 18 across the top. 20 times 18, it'd be a little easier to figure out, but it's still not the easiest, right? So I'm going to take my pencil. I'm going to mark where I have this right here. Okay, I'm going to mark it. Okay, I want you to mark yours too to show where it is. Now, if you look, what my mark is right there beside a line. It's like on top of it because I put my fork right on top of a line. Okay, so now I've got that line. So now I need to break up 18 to make it the easiest way I can get it to work with. 18, breaking it up. Makes sense to me to break up 18 into 10 and 8, right? 8 on one side, 10 on the other side. Okay, so let's see if I can count and get that figured out. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. So I'm going to draw my line right there. I'm going to say, hey, this is 10 and this is 8. Okay, now I'm going to draw my line all the way down the middle. Please take a minute to go ahead and do this yourself as well. Okay, so now you've broken it up, and what we're going to do is to show how we can solve this and make it easier to work with. Okay, so here we broke this down into 20 and 10, right? 20 rows of 10, so I'm going to write that, 20 rows of 10. Okay, the next thing I did was I said, okay, well, what if I do, I don't know, 20 rows of 8. Okay, so I'm going to write 20 rows of 8. Oh, let's put parentheses around there so I know what goes together a little bit better. Okay, so I did this box. I talked about that box. Now I've got 9 rows. How many are in each row? Well, it's still 10, right? So I'm going to say 9 rows of 10 in parentheses. And then finally I'm going to say, okay, I still have 9 rows. But this time, across the top, I have 8, right? So I've got 9 rows of 8. And in order to figure out what this and this and this and this are all together, I've got to add each one of them. So I'm going to say plus, plus, plus. It is not realistic to draw a picture like that for every single equation that we do, is it? No, it's not at all. So we're going to talk about this method called the FOIL method, okay? And it's going to help us to create an equation like this without having to draw the picture, okay? Without having to draw an area model. We're just going to be able to write these equations down. So I want you to look at the other side of your page, okay? So I'm folding mine right now to make sure that I can see it. I'm going to look at this side of our page now, okay? So the distributive property, remember, is to break something down. And the FOIL method tells us how to break it down. So F stands for first. Okay? When it means first, it means it comes first. Whoever's first in line comes first. Okay? Whoever's number 1, they came first. Okay? The O stands for outer or outside. Okay, make sure you're writing this down. The O stands for outer or outside. What does F stand for again? First. What does O stand for again? Outer or outside. Okay, the I stands for inner or inside. So I'm going to write inner, not like enter like on the computer, but inner as in inside. Okay? Okay, and the last one, the L stands for last. And we know if something is last, it's at the very end. Okay? Oops, sorry about that. Okay, so now that we have all of these written down, okay, we're going to solve us a problem, and I'm going to show you how we can use the FOIL method to help us figure it out. So here we go. On Halloween night, 29 vampires flew into a village. If each vampire bit 18 people, how many people were bitten altogether that night? The first thing I want you to do is underline the important words in this word problem. There are 2 important words. First of all, is how many important? No, it is not important, okay? It's not important because how many can mean to add, subtract, multiply, or divide, okay? And in this particular case, it doesn't give us any information. It doesn't help us at all. But altogether does. Altogether usually means to add, right? Well, here we are, and we're going to learn that altogether this time, it doesn't mean to add. we're actually going to have to multiply. And it's because we see the word each. Okay, so if we're going to write an equation for what we're trying to find here, we've got 29 vampires, and they've each bitten 18 people. So I'm going to say 29 vampires times 29 groups of 18 people that they bit equals, and I'm going to say P for people. Okay, and then we'll write our real answer down in a minute. So now I've got to break up 29, and I've got to break up 18 to make them easier to work with. We figured out how to do this already. Remember, we broke down 29 into 20 and 9. 20 plus 9, isn't that 29? Yes. So we're going to do the same thing over here. We've got 18. Well, I want to break down 18. I'm going to put 10 plus 8. Okay, so together, 10 plus 8 is 18. And together, 20 plus 9 is 29. And right in the middle, there's a time sign because right in the middle over here, there's a time sign. Okay, we just broke it down. We expanded it a little bit. So now we get into our F, O, I, and L. So F stands for first. So if you look at this side and you look at this side, we're going to multiply the first numbers together. First thing. So I'm going to draw my parentheses because I've got to group them together because they're what comes first. So first we would say 20 times 10. Because 20 is first over here, 10 is first over here. 20 times 10. Okay? Now, we're going to say my outer or my outside ones. Well, which two numbers are on that very outside of my equation? 20 and 8. Between them is a time sign. So 20 times 8. Okay, so now I have my I, okay? So I did 20 times 10, and then I did 20 times 8, okay? Let's draw some lines to show what we did. So this was first. This was outer. Okay, now we're going to do the two inside numbers. The two inside numbers are 9 and 10. So I'm going to say 9 times 10. 9 times 10. And then I'm going to say I've got 9 and 8. And if you look, those are my last numbers. It's the last number on this side of the time sign. And this is the last number on this side of the time sign. So I've got 9 times 8. Okay? Now, I've got all these different equations, but I've got to figure out how much they are all together. So that is actually when I add and figure out how much it is total. Okay, so now I need to figure out which each one of these numbers are, and then I can add them together. So 200 times 10, 20 times 10, that answer is 200. So I'm going to write 200 below that. So now I'm going to keep my plus sign. And I'm going to do what's in parentheses next. So I've got 20 times 8. Well, I don't know what 20 times 8 is, but I know that 2 times 8 is 16. And I have 1 0. Now I'm going to bring down my plus sign. Okay. Now I'm going to say I've got 9 times 10. Well, I know that 9 times 10 is 90. No reason to do all that zero counting and all that stuff. Plus, well, I have 9 plus 8. That's not 9 plus 8, it's 9 times 8. I'm sorry. So 9 times 8 is 72. Okay, so I have 200 plus 160 plus 90 plus 72. Now over here to the side, I'm going to add them all up. So I got 200 plus 160 plus 90. Make sure your 9 goes in your tens place. And 72. Same thing for that. Make sure your 7 is in your tens place. Now I can just add all these numbers up. So go ahead and take a minute and add all these numbers up, and we'll see if we get the same answer. $522 is what I got. Hopefully that's what you got too. Okay, so now I'm going to write P for people equals 522. Man, there were a lot of people bitten that night, right? Oh my goodness. Okay, so now let's read this together, okay? And I want you to try part of this by yourself. So first it says, after trick-or-treating, Amir counted her candy. She had 54 bags of Skittles with 98 Skittles, like the little pieces, in each one of those bags. How many Skittles, as in the little pieces, did she have? Okay, so these are the things that I want you to try to do, okay, when you pause the video. Thing number 1 is to write the equation, just like we did up here. Thing number 2 is to write down how you would break it down or decompose the equation, just like we did right here. Okay, so please pause the video and take a minute to do that now. Okay, so hopefully for your equation, you said I've got 54 groups of 98, okay, equals, I'm going to say S for Skittles. You could say P for pieces, okay, any of those would work. And then if I broke down 54, it would be 50 plus 4, because they add together to be 54, times, and then I've got 90 plus 8, or 98. Now I'm going to do my method here. So the first numbers, well, 50 is the first number on this side, and 90 is the first number on that side. So I'm going to say 50 times 90, okay, because there's a times sign between them that's not in the parentheses. Now I'm going to do my outer ones. Well, 50 is on the outside over here, 8 is on the outside over there. 50 times 8 in parentheses. Then I'm going to do my inside ones. I've got 4 times 90. 4 times 90. And now I'm going to do my last ones. I've got 4 times 8. Okay, so this is what I'd like for you to do when you pause the video this time. Okay, we're going to have to add these numbers together after we figure out what the product is. Okay, so multiply these together. Multiply, multiply, multiply. And then you're going to add up all of the numbers, just like we did over here on this one up here. So we multiplied and got these answers. Then we added to get the final answer. Please take a minute to do that now. Okay, so now we're going to check our work. Okay, so over here, 50 times 90, 5 times 9 is 45, and I have 1, 2, 0, so I'm going to add those 2 zeros together, plus 50 times 8, 5 times 8 is 40, plus 1, 0, plus 4 times 90, 4 times 9 is 36, plus 1, 0, plus 4 times 8, which is 32. So over here to the side, I'm going to write down 4,500 plus 4,000 plus, it's not 4,000, it's 400 right there. That O is messing me up. Okay, so I'm going to have to rewrite mine because silly me, I'm working with a pen, right? That's why we don't work with a pen in math. 4,500 plus 400 plus 360 plus 32. If you add these all together, you should get 5,292. Hopefully that's what you got as well. So we're going to put our Skittles equals 5,292. If at any time you guys need to pause the video and look over it just to check to see if your work is correct, please feel free to do that. You don't have to only pause when I ask you to pause. Okay? All right, so the next problem, what I want you to do is I want you to try this one on your own. Okay? You guys can do it. We're going to read it together, and then I want you to write your equation and go through all the next steps all by yourself, and then we can check your work after you finish. So Kroger received a shipment of 45 boxes of pumpkins. Each box contained 67 pumpkins. How many total pumpkins did Kroger receive? Well, total's important. Each is important. One of them trumps the other. Each tells us exactly what we need to do, which is to multiply. So please go ahead and pause the video, solve the problems, and then let's pick back up. Okay, So now you should have written your equation. We got 45 times 67 equals P for pumpkins. Okay, we would have broken it down into 40 plus 5, that equals 45, and 60 plus 7, or 67. Okay, so now I'm going to do my FOIL method. So I'm going to do my first, which is 40 times 60, my outer, which is 40 times 7, my inner, which is 5 times 60, and then my last, which is 5 times 7. Okay, so I'm going to put my plus signs in here on all of these. Now, I'm going to go through and I'm going to multiply these together. I want you to check to make sure you got them all correct in the area that we multiplied. So 40 times 60 is 24 plus 2 zeros, or 2,400, plus 40 times 7. 4 times 7 is 28, plus 1 0, 280, plus 5 times 60. 5 times 6 is 30. I'm going to add 1 0. Plus 5 times 7 is 35. So now I'm going to add these numbers together. 2,400 plus 280 plus 300 plus 35. Super important that you lined up your numbers correctly. I'm going to write down my 5, 1, carry my 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Write my 0. Carried my 1 to regroup. 2 plus 1 is 3. 3,015. So I'm going to say P equals 3,015. Okay, so hopefully you got that right. If you didn't, let's take a minute and you guys check your work on here and see what you did wrong. You can share your mistakes. And then if any other work is remaining for today, the substitute will give that to you at this time. I miss you guys so much, and I hope that you have a great day today, and I will talk to you more tomorrow.